All right, so the responses that I was surprised that the responses from SPL guys wasn't more harsh. Maybe I already have some of the guys blocked. First of all, SPL type guys tend to be douchebags. It's hyper masculinity, hyper macho. They've bought into the macho model, right? Macho man, rah! Right? So, which really, if you take the macho, graph, I should say, macho graph. Take the macho graph to the end, it's gay. It's like really gay. Like it's you and another guy naked wrestling on the ground. That is gay. Not that there's anything wrong with two dudes wrestling. If that's what you like, that's what you like. But that's what machoism is. That's what machismo. It's machismo is good for impressing a girl, right? That's why guys do wheelies and jump ramps and all kinds of dumb shit. It's to impress girls. Sometimes guys get addicted to the thrill and they end up becoming bungee jumpers and paragliders and all that kind of shit. Women, it doesn't really happen to because they lack testosterone. It's the testosterone that makes them weird out. And you see that in car audio. I think I talked about this. I'm not sure if I talked about this in a video, but your body was different when you were 16 than you are, whatever now, however old you are now. I know this because I objectively studied this. I'm not into the bass the way that I was when I was 16. I also don't have a boner all the time when I was 16. I used to ride on the fucking bus and get a boner. So, but it helped that I saw Melanie Brown's Bush, but I'm just saying the lightest breeze I'd get a boner. So, but one of the other arguments that I get from SPL guys, douchebags, is if you don't have a trophy, get go big or go home, bro. That is the dumbest argument. If you don't have a trophy, then you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So there was a guy, the first example of this was in 1998. The guy's name was Rich Shockley. He came on at SpeedFam where I worked. SpeedFam it's now SpeedFam IPEC, and then I think now it's just called IPEC. They built polishers. SpeedFam was the alternative. They built polishers for the semiconductor industry, mostly AMD. So anyways, he came on and we were building these $1 million tools here in Tempe. And he brought his demo car in, which he knows the same guys I do, which was, he had it done at Sound by George, Bruce George, who I'm friends with now, which is cool. And we talk about real estate. We don't even talk about audio. And, anyways, this was his system. It was a Mazda 323 hatchback. He had, I think it was 9 kicker comp 10s. And this was, 98. So these woofers were probably from 96, 95. They had the Stillwater Designs Kicker Gold logo on them. When you get down this low, the solder connections and the resistance in the wire actually adds up. And so you don't quite hit 1 ohm. And then, of course, as everybody knows about box rise, it's not 1 ohm anyway, even if you think the DCR is. So anyways, this was about 1 ohm, and it was bridged to an HCCA 225. And the highs were driven by another HCCA 225. On each channel, he had 4 tweeters, 4 4-ohm tweeters, and then 4 4-ohm mids. And he said he was hitting half an ohm on each channel. And I said, well, no, you're not. And he says, yes, I am. 4 4-ohm loads equals 1 ohm. And then another 4 4-ohm loads equals 1 ohm. And you put those 2 1-ohm loads in parallel, that's half an ohm. And I said, yeah, if you're all running the same pass band, right? That's when it threw him off. He didn't know what the fuck pass band was, meaning the frequencies that this driver plays. So that's the case here in woofers because they're all playing the same frequency, which is, let's say, 120 hertz, 150 hertz and below. Also, people, you cross your woofers over too low. I'll cross it down at 40 hertz. Like, what the fuck are you doing? There's so much mid-bass you're missing out on. Why does my thing have mid-bass? Oh, that's the other thing is the Paisa guys, the Mexican guys, they cross it over like 50 hertz, and then they use an epicenter to boost the mid-bass. It's like, why don't you just cross it over like 250, 300 hertz? Genius. And I try to talk to them, I try to educate them, and when they don't want to listen, then I still sell them a knockoff Epicenter for like 25, 30 bucks. So, but anyways, so these all have capacitors on them, usually at like a 3.3 microfarad. So they get crossed up at like 6K. And so in their passband, this is from, let's say, 6K and up. And then these are from, let's say, he probably used the electronic modules on the HCCAs. It wasn't all passive. So this one was limited to, let's say, 100 hertz and up. So that means, and typically mids like this, I think they were 6.5s or 5s or whatever. Typically they were all off about 6K anyway. So you don't need a complicated passive crossover module that you see, where it has like 2 inductors and then caps and all that kind of stuff. That's a 12 dB slope. You don't need to do heavy slopes like that. It's much easier and much simpler and much cleaner sounding to just do a simple 6 dB crossover, like say an octave above what you're trying to hit. So, but anyways, so from 6K and up, this is 1 ohm. From 100 hertz to 6K, this is 1 ohm. These are still just 1 ohm, even though you wire them in parallel, because when you look at the frequency, so now you're going from 100 up to 6K. So it's 1 ohm and 1 ohm. That's it. So, and you'll see this if this is what made it click for me when this was in the 90s. I had called Rockford tech support and I'd asked him, and it clicked on me when I was on the phone with him, because I was asking about tri-mode, using an inductor, bridging the amp, the woofer runs mono bridged, and then the highs run stereo, mixed mono. So he says, and that's what he said. He says, the woofer only sees 4 ohm, the amp only sees 4 ohm on the woofer with its passband, meaning 100 hertz and below, because I'm using a passive crossover. And that's what you see in home speakers, right? Typically you open up a very typical, most all of them are cheap. And so they'll have a really simple crossover in them, which is usually no inductor on the woofer. If you do have a fancy one, it'll have a very simple inductor. And then it crosses the mid, like up at 500 to 1,000 or even 2K. And then usually the tweeter is almost useless because they cross it up at like 6 or even 10K. And again, it's real simple, but as long as your impedance stays level across the passband, which is 20 to 20 hertz, it's fine. It's 8 ohm all the way across. So your amplifier doesn't freak out or anything like that. There's not any overlap. Now, when designing crossovers, you can use overlap as a way to sort of shape the music. I don't recommend it for most people because most people don't know what they're doing, even setting their amps. I know how to do it, and even I don't like to play with it. But sometimes somebody wants a little bit extra mid bass, so I'll cross it the woofers up a little higher, and then they have some beefy mids, and I'll cross those down a little bit lower. And what that does is it gives you a little response in the mid bass, where sometimes you don't have access to an equalizer that's 31 bands, and sometimes you just got bass and treble controls, and that's it. So that's one reason for controlling your crossover points and overlapping them or even underlapping them. Like if you have a mid bass that's too mid bassy, then you can do the opposite, where you cross your woofers down at say 80 hertz and then you cross your mids up at say 200 or even 300 hertz. Again, what you're doing is kind of creating a dip in response so that you can, again, equalize, you can shape the sound to what is desirable to you, not to what's flat. Remember we talked about that RTA is bullshit. When you have a perfectly flat RTA score, the system sounds like crap. Most people do not like it. That's why Rockford back in the day used the punch EQ, and then of course Orion copied it, which was all Bernie Bolin, by the way. Bernie used to work at Rockford in the very beginning, and then he went and started Orion. He's like, this is fucking easy. I can go do this, and that's when he did it. Oh, by the way, I meant to put this in another video, but the way back in the day, I was friends with one of the guys. His dad worked at Rockford, and we started talking about it. And he had all these wild stories about where they came up with Rockford, like Jim, of course, Fosgate. Jim Fosgate started the company, and then the guy Rockford used to work for Harley Davidson and all this other stuff, and then they got together. It's all bullshit. What happened was they took over Fosgate Electronics from Jim Fosgate, and then they happened to be on Rockford Drive in Tempe, which is it just happens to be a street named Rockford Drive. And at the time, you got to think about this. This was in the early 80s, so one of the biggest shows on was Rockford Files, and they got a print up. It was like a old dot matrix printer, and the overlay from the watermarks on the paper, it said Rockford Fosgate. And they go, hey, that's a cool name. And then that's it. That's the whole story. It's the dumbest thing. But if you look at a lot of startups and things like that and how they got their names, it's a lot like that. So anyways, Bernie saw this and saw that these guys, there was not really any room to grow and that he could go and start his own thing. And Bernie and Dick LeMay went and started, they actually started PPI first. Well, they started building the board company for PPI, and then they ended up helping start that, and then Bernie went and started Orion. So, but anyways, that's something else altogether. Back to the SPL douches. I do not support SPL contests. SPL contests are the dumbest things in the world. Next to the slapping contest. That's pretty dumb too. But typically, I don't need to have some sort of cockfight with other guys. And there's always going to be somebody that's bigger and better than you. And the result, it's a lot like being on drugs. And in fact, a lot of the guys that are involved in SPL contests sell drugs, do drugs, that kind of thing. It's just really super hyper macho. It doesn't do anything. A lot of these guys are like, oh, band pass isn't a waste of time. What about this guy's score? That's that same argument. There are other ways to do it than just a band pass box. And again, let's say you score 185 with a band pass box. Good for you. What does that mean? SPL, sound pressure level. Does that mean the music sounds good? No. It sounds like farts. It sounds like really loud farts. That's what an SPL contest sounds like. It's the dumbest thing in the world. Now, if you're doing it from promotion and things like that, that used to be a thing, right? You used to be able to get sponsored by somebody. I even wanted to get sponsored by MA Audio back in the day when they had the PPI Art Series knockoff amps. I saw that, my buddy Mike Quesada showed me that MA Audio amps are great. I think he was, I complained that he had a Hot Shots amp, right? I go, well, Hot Shots? Blah, that's a shit amp. And he goes, really? He says, you put this up against the Punch 40? The Punch 40 only has 3 dB of headroom. The Hot Shots amp had over 4 dB of headroom. And it cost a fraction of the price. And the THD was the same or better. So who's the dummy, right? The guy that buys the Rockford amp for whatever it was, $250, $300, or the guy that buys the Hot Shots amp for $60. So, that's what you want to think. Is his saying was to bench it before you bitch it. So, but anyways, this is all stuff that I've known for years. I apologize for not telling you guys earlier. Typically, I just tell people that visit me, but I realize I need to get all this stuff off my chest and I need to get this out there so that you guys can experience being able to work from home, being able to help people in your community, being able to make money without having to ask anybody for permission. And that's what Robot's all about. I'm actually getting ready to move on to the next part of my career, which is making movies. And I think it's the future is Tesla. I would love to help Tesla develop a media division. And I'll talk more about that in other videos. I'm not a fan of Netflix. I'm not a fan of the studio system. And I'm not a fan of the Screenwriters Guild. I think it's all a sham and it's garbage. And so I want to go do something else. And that's being a producer for movies and writer and director. So, but I love you guys. Thank you for hanging on. And I love your comments, negative or positive. The negative ones, just let me know who to block and let me know that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. This is something I've dedicated my life to. I've done this for a living full time since 2003. Okay, what have you done with your life? Okay, oh, I built a band pass box and I got a trophy in my local area. Good job. I'm glad you could get a trophy. So there are other things more important than doing that, like providing for your family. Like what kind of retirement do you have? Do you have passive income? Can you provide affordable housing for people that can't afford it? That's a huge problem here in Phoenix and an even bigger problem. It's like a pandemic in California. So anybody that's able to solve that problem, do it. In fact, there's an article I was talking about. I posted it on Facebook about a guy that started building homes for the homeless and the city came after him and wanted to tax him. There's a way to get around that. And I will talk to you about that. But right now, I love you. Don't waste your time on fucking SPL contests. If you like stereo stuff, great. If you just use it for yourself. Just do a demo. Work not necessarily on sound quality, but just something that you can get into your car and enjoy. It sucks that you may have to do a commute, but if you got a system, it sounds great and you don't give a shit about it. Practice more of that. Practice more of letting go. Practice more of surrendering, because that's really the key to growing and the key to creating a better life more congruent with who you really are inside. So, and that's what I'm trying to do with Robot. I love you guys. I will talk to you later.